It is a nationwide crisis impacting every one of us. Opioids, legal and illegal, they're addictive and deadly.
This epidemic is a national health emergency.
Lives are being lost by the tens of thousands every year to painkiller abuse and heroin. The financial impact is in the billions. Opioid issues knife across each state, endangering every American city, suburb, and town, all cut deeply by the opioid epidemic. Eric Bowling lost his son to the synthetic opioid fentanyl at his Colorado University.
We must commit to removing the stigma of shame that comes with addiction and helping change public opinion so that people find evidence-based treatment before it's too late.
Stand up and fight the opioid crisis now. Your voice, your future. Opioids. A national crisis is brought to you by Liberty University. Now, here's Eric Bowling.
We are broadcasting out of WPEC-TV, our Sinclair station in West Palm Beach, Florida. Abuse of prescription painkillers and illegal street drugs caused a record number of overdose deaths in America. In fact, 72,000 in 2017 alone. That's a whopping 200 per day. And South Florida has been hit especially hard. Good evening and welcome to our Your Voice, Your Future Town Hall, Opioids and National Crisis. I'm Eric Bowling. Thank you for joining us. Tonight, we'll discuss the challenges facing law enforcement, families, and this community and all communities around the country. Joining us in studio, we will speak with experts from local treatment facilities and the St. Lucie Sheriff's Office. We will also speak with Jim Wahlberg, who is here to talk about his latest movie called If Only. Plus, a special guest from Liberty University will also be joining us. But we're going to start the evening with a one-on-one interview with Florida's U.S. Senator Marco Rubio, who sat down with WPEC TV anchor Jim Grimes.
One of the biggest issues about the border is the illegal drugs that are coming in. But we have that problem here in Florida as well. Do you think that there has to be more funds given to the state to help fight that?
Well, obviously the state has a role to play in sort of identifying what happens once the drugs get inside the country and treatment options that we provide people, and there needs to be more done in that regard. But in terms of keeping them out of the country, this is a multifaceted problem. Most certainly the border is a big part of it. I mean, we see, you can go to the part of our efforts to do our counter drug, and you can see the drug flights leaving South America, landing on a field somewhere in Guatemala or Honduras, placed on a truck, and then given to the Mexican trafficking organizations who bring it right across our border. But it's more extensive than that. We also have drugs coming in by mail, by FedEx, by UPS. I mean, people ordering fentanyl and having it delivered. So we have to attack all of those things. And, but most certainly the border is a big part of it.
And talk to me about the opioid epidemic as well, because we see that on a daily basis here in Florida.
Yeah, and it has two sources. The first are people that were hooked on the pharmaceutical grade opioids, and once that's cut off, the only way to prevent withdrawal is to find it in the street. And that's where you're seeing these deaths. When you buy something from the street, it's not labeled, it's not FDA approved, you have no idea what's in it. You have no idea how much, and you know, fentanyl, as an example, is highly toxic. There's carfentanil, for which there is no safe amount that you could take. Even the smallest dosage will kill a human being. Fentanyl is something that it's not measured when you're taking it from the street and buying it. And you've seen a huge uptick in deaths, and you're starting to see all kinds of drugs laced with fentanyl. So, we most certainly have to attack the source of it, but we also have to help provide more treatment options for people. This is a chronic and severe condition. If someone does not get medically supervised treatment, they will not be able to overcome an opioid addiction.
Where do you think that source of fentanyl is coming in from?
Well, a lot of it's from China. I mean, it's manufactured in China and shipped here. I know the administration's talked to the Chinese about cracking down on it. To date, that has not happened. China is one of the most carefully monitored societies on the planet. On the planet. It's a repressive regime. They know who's doing this, and they're allowing them to continue to do it. A lot of it is, you've seen a growth in Mexico and in Latin America and some of the production and as well. But ultimately, while it comes from Mexico, it's shipped to the U.S. Some of it is cross-border. Some of it is by in cargo that comes by sea, and a lot of it is by mail. I mean, literally mail ordered or sent in the mail, and that all of those things need to be addressed.
Lawsuits against the pharmaceutical industry have been filed in almost every single state in this country, including the county we are in right now, Palm Beach County. Today, Purdue Pharmaceutical, the makers of OxyContin, settled a $270 million lawsuit. Joining us now is State Attorney Dave Ehrenberg, who oversees cases in this area. But tonight, he's coming to us from Washington, D.C. Dave, you listened to Marco Rubio talk about what the major problems are in this area, Palm Beach County. You're State Attorney here. What do you see? What's the major problem here? Is it fentanyl? Is it heroin? Is it OxyContin? What's going on here?
Yeah, well, thank you, Eric, for hosting this important town hall. This started as an OxyContin epidemic, and that morphed into an oxycodone epidemic, which is the generic version of OxyContin. And you saw pill mills on seemingly every street corner. We had more pain clinics in Palm Beach County in the years 2010 and 2011 than we had McDonald's in Palm Beach County. When we finally shut down the pill mills, then the epidemic moved to a heroin epidemic, because heroin acts the same way in your brain as oxycodone. They're both part of the morphine molecule. And then we had a heroin epidemic that has morphed into a fentanyl epidemic. So today, the greatest challenge for us is fentanyl and its analogs like carfentanil, which is an elephant tranquilizer, way more powerful than even fentanyl is. And so it keeps morphing. But one thing that we can do, and Senator Rubio is correct, is we need to get tough on the exporter of fentanyl into this country, and that is China. So when we have these trade talks with China, let us not forget that we must do something about the unfettered access to American markets of this poisonous Chinese fentanyl.
Dave, let me jump in here, because I understand the pharmaceutical, the pharmacological, and also what's going on with the transportation across our borders from China. But I want to talk to you about your state, your county. Pharmaceutical companies, I talked about it today. Purdue Pharma settled a $287 million lawsuit. They were sued for $20 billion by Oklahoma and Nebraska. They're settling these lawsuits. Does Palm Beach County and or the state of Florida look to sue any pharmaceutical companies for what they've done in the past? They've already lost one case.
Palm Beach County is part of a larger lawsuit against the pharmaceutical companies and the distributors who have contributed to this unprecedented epidemic. The state of Florida is also separately part of a lawsuit as well. So we have multiple lawsuits going on within the state of Florida. We have the local government lawsuits and the larger state lawsuits. So I do believe that the manufacturers and distributors of this stuff are going to be held accountable civilly in court, which will help defray some of the unbelievable costs to society for increased medical care and fire rescue and Narcan and all these costs that are caused by this epidemic that have been unreimbursed.
All right, one quick question. What about the dealers? What are you doing with regard to dealers? President Trump famously said, I want to step up the punitive phase of dealers when we catch them, drug dealers. What does Florida want to do? What does Palm Beach County want to do?
Florida has a new law that will hold the drug dealer accountable for the death of the end user if it's by fentanyl now. You could, in the past, go after them for certain other drugs, but not fentanyl. Well, that's a new law. We have now a mandatory minimum and a law that is being used for the first time, little by little, to charge with manslaughter or murder the drug supplier. See, in the past, what would happen is you would have a drug dealer kill someone through his product, and that would be the end of it. The drug user would be dead, and that's the end of the investigation. Now, we use the cell phone of the drug user, we collect evidence, and now we've tried to find out who supplied him with this stuff. And if we could tie it directly to a single drug dealer, then we can file those charges, and that's been used more and more.
You know, I didn't tell the story up top, but my son passed away. He was a sophomore at University of Colorado. It was September 8th, 2017. That same night, a 19-year-old died at Denver University, about 23 miles away from Boulder, Colorado. They believe it was the same dealer that distributed a deadly dose of fentanyl to both my son and a Navy admiral's son at the same time. Are you going after these type of dealers?
Yes, we are. And it's so frustrating for parents like you, Eric, that has to know that there are sick individuals out there who continue to sell this poison, knowing it will lead to deaths, thinking that they are untouchable, that you can never trace it back to this this dealer. The challenge that we face as prosecutors is that we have a high burden of proof, and so we have to make sure that the drug that kills the end user is traced to that supplier, when usually, unfortunately, for many people who pass away from drug abuse, they have multiple suppliers. And so that trace, that channel, is the hardest thing we have to track down to tie it to the single drug seller. And by the way, Eric, the fact that you have taken this leadership role, you are honoring your son's memory every day in your important work.
Dave, thank you very much. Dave Ehrenberg, he's a state's attorney for Palm Beach County. Thank you very much. When we come back, we have Jim Wahlberg, who's a filmmaker who wrote a film, produced a film about opioids. He's a recovering addict as well. This is a very important interview you don't want to miss. We'll be right back.
The national crisis has caused sweeping changes across the entire medical industry. Today, doctors are simply needing a heightened awareness as they try and balance their patients' pain with a deadly dependence on these drugs. Donald Houghton is an Army veteran suffering from terminal prostate cancer, leaving him in constant pain.
If there's a fire in the house, I couldn't get out.
He has long been prescribed opioids for the pain, but due to new guidelines from the VA in light of the national crisis, he's being tapered off the drugs.
Can't do the things that I know I can do.
His son Everett says the active man he once knew is now bedridden.
It really didn't hit home until probably about April, when I came to the house one day and saw my father laid out on the couch in extreme, excruciating pain.
It's just one of many impacts of the epidemic.
I don't think there's any family in the United States that's not affected by it.
All of Dr. Joan Lemon's patients suffer from opioid addiction or dependence.
Depending on how long a patient has been dependent on opiates, the harder it may be for them to get off, and some people can never get off of opiates.
Through methadone, they try to break patients free of their potentially deadly addiction.
I have seen patients that get up, shower, dress, pack a lunch for work, and we find them dead by the front door because they shoot heroin before they go to work.
One of the backlashes, doctors now limited in treating people with true opioid needs. Rules to prevent abuse tying their hands when it comes to treating people with serious pain.
There is limitation on how many days worth of opiates a doctor can write, and that is 3 days worth, 7 days worth, and then you have to have a valid reason for giving somebody more than that.
Some doctors are even jailed for recklessly prescribing the drugs. State Attorney John Mulchan says it's important to keep doctors in check, but it's a double-edged sword.
It really becomes a thing that drives them to do anything to get that drug.
I'm Cor Snellender reporting.
Welcome back to Your Voice, Your Future Town Hall. Opioids, a national crisis. We want to hear from you using the hashtag #YourVoiceYourFuture. I want to introduce someone who called me and said, I want to get involved in this. This is an important topic for you and us. Jim Wahlberg, you may know the name, the last name, brother of Mark Wahlberg, is a film producer. He produced a film called If Only. I want you to take a look at a little piece of that important film. Watch.
Hello? Ms. Diaz? It's Dr. Edwards. I'm looking at Isaac's test results. I have bad news.
Bro, this is gonna be the biggest party of our lives, okay? You're not missing it.
All right, I'll be there.
My man. And hey, don't forget to bring something, all right?
Isaac tested positive for opiates and marijuana.
Wrong group of friends.
My name's Adam. I started drinking about 2 years ago. I'm 18 now. And
coke from me.
Just
older brother's friends had it.
What did I do wrong?
Say hi, Mom.
What did I do wrong?
You didn't do anything. And you heard their stories. I went to a party once and got high. Big deal. Who doesn't do that my age? A lot of people. So why do you take them?
Because they give me a buzz, and I need a buzz to get through this day. You know that. Here, take one.
Are Connor and Corey doing them too? Is that what's going on? Are your friends doing them too?
The searing heart of rudeness. By mercies, great and small. I've come to reckon goodness, the greatest gift of all.
Let us be helpful ever to those who are in need, in each new day endeavor to do some gentle deed.
I don't want to have to bench my starting point guard.
Isaac, what about it exactly did you like?
The subtext.
Which was?
Living with regret. A lot of times when we're young, we think we're invincible. We're not.
And now I'd like to introduce Jim Wahlberg. Thank you, Jim. Come on in. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, please. Thank you for having me.
So I think the first question is, Jim, why this type of movie?
Well, so I'm a person in long-term recovery. And at a certain point, as this epidemic really started to just get completely out of control, I sort of felt obligated to try to contribute in some way. And so this was my effort at a contribution. The plan wasn't to be, this movie's 4 years old now. I've showed it to 250,000 people personally. That was never the intention. The intention was, we'll write a script, we'll raise some money, we'll make the film, maybe we'll give it to the schools or whatever and move on. But in the process of shooting the film, I met a couple hundred parents that lost their kids. And then everything changed. I couldn't just move on, you know? And so we just kind of put it out there. We never once ever solicited a screening. We did a premiere, people started to hear about it, people started to request that we could come and show the movie to them. And what we do is we show the film and there's a whole event wrapped around it, right? So I've never shown the film without a parent there that lost a child to speak. And sort of everything that I say is really leading up to them speaking. And, you know, I went from really not knowing anybody that had this really personal experience with this epidemic to knowing thousands of parents across the country who have buried their children. And, you know, that's not supposed to be happening.
Well, and thank you for that. I know how parents, I know the reaction parents will have when they see that film, because I'm one of them.
Yeah.
What's their reaction when they watch this?
Well, you know, the reaction is, I think the response has been positive. You know, I feel like when we sort of set out, if somebody reaches out to us and says, can you come to our community and do a screening? I'm always sort of encouraging the people on my end, junior high, junior high, junior high, junior high, right? But I always end up in front of high school kids, you know, and, you know, they're engaged in the conversation. And, you know, clearly they're moved by hearing parents that have had this difficult situation, this horrible situation. But they seem to be engaged and they're open about the fact that they know people that they've lost people in their families. We do events, we're on tour right now with the DEA. We're doing opioid youth summits, 10,000 kids per event. And at a certain point in the event, I'll come out and I have them bring up the house lights and I ask the kids, anybody that's been personally affected by this, if you lost a family member, a friend, a classmate, please stand up. It never fails. It's always 75% to 80% of the kids are standing up. Now, we are going to, the cities we go to are identified by the DEA. So they have the latest data. So we're going ground zero. Every place, you know, we've been in West Virginia, we've been in Salt Lake City, we've been to Louisville, Kentucky, Manchester, New Hampshire. So these kids, I mean, you can see the pain. You see the pain in their eyes. You see that it's crazy.
Jim, I can't tell you how many parents have called me and said, hey, you know, we have a real big problem in this area, and they'll name any town USA.
Yeah.
And I say, you know, it's rampant.
Yep.
It's the national health crisis of all time, possibly in America. I asked the First Lady this. A couple of weeks ago we were in Las Vegas, and the First Lady, I said, do you talk to Barron? Her son was 12 at the time.
Yeah.
Yes, I've spoken to Barron about drugs. I said to her, what age do you need to start having this discussion? I agree with her. She said 8 years old. What do you see?
I think younger. I think, you know, we talked, I had a parent do a post-summit interview with me on a local news affiliate, and she said, when our kids are old enough to understand what we're saying to them, we'd tell them to stay away from strangers. Don't put your hand over a burning stove. We need to be talking to them about this at that point. That's what she said. And I happen to agree. I definitely think, first grade, I mean, this
is stunning, even to me who's lost a child. It's got to be stunning to people who are watching this right now. First grade, folks. First grade, start having the discussion, and by all means, have it regularly. Don't do it once and you got this done with. It's not the birds and the bees talk. Yeah. It's stay on it, still talk. And what do you think is the most important thing a parent can do to keep their young ones, not helicopter parent, but just keep them out of trouble?
Well, I mean, communication is the key, right? You got to talk to your kids. I think that we talk a lot about using this film just as a conversation starter. That's all we're trying to do is start a conversation. So we're giving parents a tool. The really difficult thing for us is to get parents. I think the kids in a lot of cases are more inclined to want to have the conversation than a lot of the parents that we come across. It's like pulling teeth to get people to come out.
In your film, I got to tell you, that was a powerful moment where the mother is saying, "What did I do wrong?" Taking the blame, and for a kid's got to be like, "Oh, I don't want. This is something I want to deal with right now."
That's what
What's
every
the right
parent's.
way? What's the
that's
right
every
way
parent's reaction.
I don't have the luxury of doing over. I just don't have the luxury of doing over. Talk to some parents out here who may worry about their child. Give them a piece of advice.
Well, I think, as I said, communication is the key. Talking to your kids, talking to them about the real. I mean, people are dying at alarming rates, and they're younger and younger. Also, parents need to be involved in every aspect of their children. Anytime they have an injury or anything like that, they need to be knee deep in that conversation with the doctors, because they're giving this stuff out still. This late in the game, they're still giving it out like candy.
There's one thing that we've learned. We've done, this is our 10th town hall with Sinclair around the country. We're going to do 4 more. Well, I think the most important thing I've learned, I'm not an expert, I wish I wasn't in this chair, but the thing I learned is removing the stigma or lifting the stigma of opioid abuse, addiction, use is really important. In other words, it can't be seen as something that only those bad kids over there do, or only those bad people over there do, or only it's only someone with a needle in their arm, and it's not like that anymore. It's potentially any kid could be exposed to it.
Well, for us, what's really key is having a parent speak at every one of our events. It gives other families an opportunity to see. We always want them to be from that community. Hey, they're just like me. They're from the same neighborhood I am. Their kids went to the same school I did. It's not happening somewhere else. It's happening right here, and it needs to be addressed right now. We've been to areas that are the highest tax bracketed areas in the country. And I've been there. We're going to be in Baltimore for an opioid youth summit. We're going to have 10,000 kids in a building. And, this thing, it does not discriminate. It does not matter. It will find its way into your home. And the thing is when parents are unwilling to have the conversation, and if they think, if I just don't pay attention to it, maybe it'll go away. The one tangible thing I always leave people with from our audience, with parents, if I say, you've seen the film, you've heard the conversation, if you still feel like it's not for us, if you can just do one simple thing for me tonight when you go home, empty out that medicine cabinet. That stuff that you got 10 years ago because you pulled a hamstring trying to run a marathon, get it out of your house, because it's either going to end up in the hands of your kid or one of their friends.
So one of the other things I think is important in removing the stigma, and we've learned this again because of these town halls, look, it's great to talk to parents. It's great to talk to kids. Are you talking to coaches? Are you talking to priests and pastors? Are you talking to employers? Saying, look, if you have a person who's struggling, they may be afraid of getting thrown off the basketball team or fired. Or suspended from school if they come with this problem. I mean, we need to let everyone know this is all hands up. 200 people a day are dying from drugs. A day. That's an airplane flying into a mountainside every single day, killing everyone on board. This is all hands on deck. I know law enforcement, most states have a Good Samaritan law where if you're overdosing, or your friend is overdosing, you're not going to get arrested. But we need the coaches, we need the teachers, the pastors, the parents, everyone on board. Are you doing that?
Well, I mean, we do a lot of that. We do, when we have, so we do an event and then there's a panel discussion. So we're bringing people from all walks of life, from the mayor, the district attorney, police chief, everybody there. And the message is real simple. There's no such thing as a dumb question. Let's take the opportunity. Ask the question, people, right? And another thing that we try to emphasize is they're your kids. They're not your friends. They're your kids. You're responsible to do certain things. And if you got to go search their room, then you got to go search their room. We bring in we always bring in resources, right? So we bring in a mock bedroom as one of the resources that's in sort of in the hallway. There's all these different organizations that are there so that they can show you, right?
You know, we only have about a half a minute or so, and I just want you to tell, this is so important. How do groups get in touch with Jim Walberg and talk and get one of these big events to happen in their neighborhood? How do they start? This is so important that you're doing the work you're doing. How can they find
So
you?
I guess the really easiest way to get in touch with us is to connect with us on our Facebook page, right? You can just messenger us, which is If Only, and it's If Only Movie. And so there have been a number of screenings that have come from just that conversation, reaching out saying, we have this community. So I've made a commitment that if they ask, we will come. We'll just say yes, and then we'll figure out the details later.
No, you're doing great work, my friend.
Well, thank you.
Jim Walberg, thank you very much. If Only is the movie, and it's on their Facebook page. Contact Jim if you got a group that needs to be spoken to about this. We need to lift the stigma of steroids, of opioids.
Yep.
Remember, you can contact the National Opioid Action Network with the number on your screen right now. This is very important. You have someone that you're worried about, call this number right now. They'll help, or have someone call on their behalf. 800-662-4357. Still ahead, we'll sit down with local doctors and law enforcement. Don't go away.
We were designed to be creative. We were meant to seek the truth, to explore the world around us. Challenges, we embrace them. Compromise, never. We are a community dedicated to championing the gospel. We are champions for Christ.
It's not a new crisis. Opioid overdoses have long been a deadly reality across the country and the Sunshine State, but it's an epidemic seeming to get worse by the day.
We've had morgues run out of room because they can't accommodate all of the bodies as a result of this epidemic.
Florida Attorney General Ashley Moody has only been in office since January, but says her administration took immediate steps to curtail a growing number of overdoses across the state.
As soon as I took office, day one, we established a statewide group of experts, bipartisan, to address what is working, what has not worked, where can we be most efficient when we direct our resources.
Moody says when she was campaigning for her current office, the average was 14 people in Florida dying from opioids each day. Today, she says that number is now an average of 17.
Why do you feel it still continues to keep on rising?
The addiction to this drug is very difficult to overcome. If one becomes addicted to the opioid drug, someone will want that drug more than they will want food or water.
But she admits it will take more than government to get it done.
This is not something that we as law enforcement will arrest our way out of. We might need to tweak legislation to give us more tools to go after traffickers.
Welcome back to our town hall in beautiful West Palm Beach, Florida. While the scenery here is sunny and bright, there's a dark side to this treasured coast. On average, last year, opioids killed 15 people every day in the state of Florida alone. And joining us now, Dr. Raju Mangrola of the Hanley Center, Dr. Aldo Morales of Retreat at Palm Beach, from the St. Lucie County Sheriff's Office, Chief Deputy Gary Wilson, and Major Douglas Hardy. Thank you all very much. I'm going to start with the doctors, if you don't mind. Let's start with Dr. Raju. You've been hearing a lot. You've been hearing a lot of discussion about whether who's at fault. Is it the opioid producers? Our kids? Tell us about the chemical situation that goes on in an addict's brain or a user's brain.
It's fair to say that opiates probably one of the most addictive chemical drugs available in the market, legal or illegal. And when somebody takes an opiate, there was a time when people thought that somebody could take pain medicine for a few months and after 3 months they would get addicted to it. But the data now shows that you could be a very naive person, you don't have a history of addiction. You take pain medicine, specifically opiate, for about a month, let's say OxyContin or Percocet or whatever, you're going to get addicted to that medicine. The addiction process starts right off the bat within the month. Mm-hmm. And what happens is it leads to your body becomes dependent on the medicine. There is an emotional component to it. Mm-hmm. And the stronger the medicine, the higher the...
So let me do that. Let me take it over to Dr. Aldo. Now fentanyl. Fentanyl killed my son. Fentanyl has been around for, what did they say, several decades. But all of a sudden, fentanyl is the #1 killer of opioids in America. What has happened recently?
The ironic thing is that the stronger the drug, the more that addicted patients are going to seek it. So when fentanyl was introduced as a contaminant to oxycodone, for example, or heroin, the addicted patient would get a higher kick from that, and they would seek that. Then we came out with carfentanil, not we, I'm talking about the drug community, came out with carfentanil, even more powerful and more deadly. And then patients are actually seeking that in search of the elusive high.
Well, Chief Gary, does Florida have the Good Samaritan law that I referenced earlier in the show, where if you're overdosing or you're with someone who's overdosing, you can present yourself to a police officer or a firehouse and say, look, someone's overdosing, and they will not be arrested on the spot?
Yes, that's true. We have that capability, and it doesn't happen anywhere near as many times as it should.
Major Douglas, the doctor talked to us about a stronger and stronger drug. What are you seeing on the street? Why are people turning to such strong? Let me ask you this: why are people turning to dealers who have dealt drugs that have killed people?
I think a lot of times the addict who was hooked on oxycodone or one of the other opioids at some point doesn't know what they're buying. So they could be going and purchasing heroin, which it may actually be a carfentanil or fentanyl-based product.
Major, how much is a hit? How much is a high on the street for an opioid? How much does it cost?
Anywhere around $30.
I've heard less. Chief, I've heard as little as $5 a pill.
And that's true. It depends on what the quantities are, what's available at the time. It's about demand.
Doctors, let me ask you this. My son passed away from a fentanyl-laced Xanax. He thought it was a legitimate prescriptive Xanax. It wasn't. It was a Chinese knockoff. Dr. Aldo, what happened to him, my son?
Well, they are putting fentanyl in drugs that are not being sold as opiates, because the drug dealer will have the patient coming back because the patient was able to get a good reaction from that particular drug. So the stronger the drug dealer can make it, or the stronger he can provide, the more business he's going to have. Also, you need to remember that the addicted patient loses a capacity to make a rational decision. You cannot reason with a person like that, or they are incapable of saying, you know what, this is dangerous, I'm going to stop doing this.
Now,
they lose the capacity for
Dr. Roger, why do we need something that, if I'm not mistaken, fentanyl is something like 50 to 100 times more powerful than morphine?
The fentanyl that is used in medicine, it's much different than the fentanyl that is smuggled from China or comes from China. Those medications are FDA regulated. It helps with pain control. It's a longer acting. Most of the time they use a patch. And for defined situations, for defined patients, there's a need for that kind of medication. But the stuff that we are talking about, fentanyl that we get from the streets, that's not the product that you get in the hospital. That's not the product that you get from pharmacies. That's something that comes from China and Mexico. And they are 50 times stronger than heroin. And one important thing that why does fentanyl cause instant death? There is an element of you stop breathing, but there is also a medical component. There is a thing called chest wall rigidity. Your ability to breathe stops instantly. When you take fentanyl, the person who comes in contact with fentanyl, whether it's on the skin, your ability to breathe stops immediately. Then you start, if your heart cannot expand, you're going to stop breathing right away.
Yeah,
and that is different than any other drug.
Let me ask Major. Major, you're on the street. You guys are running up against fentanyl all over the place. I've seen or heard of cops who are making a bust actually overdosing because they're just coming in contact with fentanyl.
And we have, and we've had to train our personnel about the dangers of dealing with these fentanyl. So we've had to place many protocols to protect just our men and women and first responder community that are dealing with some of this.
Chief, do your squad cars all have Narcan or an opioid reversal drug?
Yes, Eric. We've been carrying Narcan for almost 3 years now, and we have had many cases where we have used it to reverse the effects of opioids. The sad thing is that we can go through a weekend where we'll see the same individual 2-3 times overdosing, administer Narcan, and bring them back. And it's just amazing that...
There's a discussion in that. The discussion is, do we push out Narcan, allowing an addict to overdose and come back? But let me ask you, Chief, wouldn't we administer a defibrillator to an overweight person? Of course we would, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So how much does a dose of Narcan cost the police force?
What we usually get them at is about $80 a dose.
Okay, so that's good, Major. It used to be in the $2,000 dose range.
Yeah, and what we're doing now is there's many grant opportunities out there from the pharmaceuticals, so we tap into many of those opportunities.
Let's start with you, Dr. Raju. What else besides Narcan can we use to I don't know, save people's lives who are overdosing?
Well, there is a whole aspect of treatment, which is very important. You were talking about reducing the stigma and allowing people to seek treatment. And the role of Suboxone, the role of Subutex, especially to reverse overdoses, has been very effective. And the federal government has pushed it hard to use that medication. There are other, what we call it, medication assistant treatment programs that use other medication like naltrexone and injections of naltrexone. That also helps. Also,
yeah, go ahead. Allow me to ask Dr. Aldo something. These other drugs, methadone and the other drugs that are used to get people off their addictions, are they addictive themselves, and are they effective?
Well, some are addictive and some are not. They are all effective, but they have to be used by trained personnel, such as addiction specialists. But we have another problem. Let me bring this up. The problem is getting a patient into treatment. There was a landmark study by the federal government, 2017, where 21 million people who needed drug and alcohol treatment services, 95% said they felt they didn't need the treatment. Mm-hmm. So the problem is getting somebody into treatment. Yeah. Then once you do get them into treatment, then we have to worry about, can the patient afford treatment? Is there insurance? What is the funding?
And we also have to worry about whether or not they start using right after they finish treatment, because they're at times the most vulnerable. I'm pulling an audible here, guys. This is the audience. You guys play with me for a minute? Right now the control room is freaking out. My stage manager is freaking out. What we have here is we have enforcement and we have treatment. I'm going to walk over here. They don't even know this. Sorry. Sorry. Okay, audience, you participate for me, all right? Opioids is a problem, right? Yes, can I hear a clap? Yes, opioids is a problem. Big? How big? Enforcement and treatment. By a show of hands and claps, what's the most important factor to treating opioids? Is it stronger enforcement? Can I hear it for this? Can I hear stronger treatment? Very important. I agree with you. I think we have a lot of laws. I think we have a lot of, these guys are doing important work. I'm not belittling what enforcement's doing. I thank you every day for what you guys do. Important. The president called me after my son passed away. He said, what can I do? the day after. I said, Mr. President, thank you. I'm not ready to talk about it. He called me on Thanksgiving a couple weeks later. He said, come in, let's talk about it. I went in. He was very strong on the enforcement side. Remember when he said, let's kill drug dealers? I mean, he backed away from that. I said, Mr. President, enforcement's important. We need you. We need the border enforced. We need people on the streets. We need more funding for Narcan and more funding for cops and firemen. But I said, we really need more funding for the treatment side. These people agree, yes? Yes. Yeah, I think this is really, really important discussion, guys. I did this. I called Nola, but went and walked over there because I had a hunch. We're learning. We're learning what matters to people right here, right now. We're going to say thank you to Chief Gary Wilson, Major Douglas Hardy, Dr. Raju Mangrola, and Dr. Aldo Morales. Can we get those people, all four of them, a big round of applause? Thank you very much, guys. Thank you. When we come right back, we have Rick Amato from Liberty University, a good friend of ours, also one of the co-sponsors and sponsor of these town halls. Very, very important discussion. Don't go away.
It's like a choice that you choose over your kids, but you really don't. It's something, addiction is a bad thing.
There is an alarming number of parents like Angelia Bibb. They're smothered by opioid addiction, and they've lost their children to foster care.
Oh, it's overwhelming the system, it really is. We've seen an increase in kids coming into the foster care system, a much greater increase.
Sean Salamita is the president of Families First Network, one of the state contracted agencies providing foster care and adoption services. He says the sheer numbers are a factor. More children in the system than homes to place them.
Kids are real challenging in terms of their behaviors. They've had no structure, no parenting.
Angelia lost all 4 of her children to foster care over the years. Her youngest son will be 3 in July. The majority of children being removed from their homes are from birth to 5 years old. Dr. Irvin Williams is director of specialty programs for the Community Mental Health Services at Lakeview Center. He says people who are addicted often have a change in priorities.
Well, they're neglecting their children, they're not providing financially as they should, and emotionally they're not available.
You're not even thinking about the fact that you've got these kids until you come down and you're, looking to get high again.
The ultimate goal of foster care is to be able to stabilize homes to return children to a safe, nurturing environment. When you're working through substance abuse, this is not a quick nor an easy fix.
The length of stay is longer. The percentage of kids that go home within 1 year has come down.
Angelia is in the medicated assisted treatment program. She's trying to rebuild some type of relationship with her older son, who's 25 now. She has no contact with her 2 daughters. It was her baby who has motivated her through recovery this time.
I was not going to lose another one of my children.
Joining me now, as you can see, Liberty University is one of the sponsors of this very important town hall series across the country. Rick Amato is alumni from Liberty University. Also, I believe you're from Palm Beach County. Is that right, sir?
Right.
Tell us your story. It's very compelling.
Well, Eric, the major emphasis of the opioid crisis, and I respect it and appreciate it, is what you said tonight, enforcement and treatment. Well, there's one other issue, prevention. Because as long as there is a demand, there'll be a supply. Addiction is a genetically predispositioned, developmentally acquired brain disease. That's what will eliminate the stigma. If you had cancer or leukemia, if someone had some sort of blood disease, malignant myeloma, we wouldn't say, don't take your chemo, don't get your medicine. You're a bad person. You need to be punished.
So what is it? What's the treatment for addiction?
We have to reach the children. Wahlberg's got it right. And we have mandated, in 1996, I launched the War on Addiction. And we treat addicts and we help their families. Because for every addict, there's a family that loves them. There's a codependent that often enables them. It's a family disease. It's communicable. And as a society, we need Narcan everywhere. We need tougher laws. We need drug reform, criminal justice reform. Thank God we have that. But we need to reach the kids before they get the disease.
Tell us your story.
Well, my story is I was a rebellious youth on the south side of Detroit. Started drinking at 11 years old. After all the kids hid their half of the 40-ouncer, the next day I was looking for theirs. So I already had a predisposition to that. Then I had a religious conversion. When I was 15 years old, I ended up a prodigy preacher, preaching 55 countries, met presidents all over the world, Gorbachev, Yeltsin in Russia. And then I thought, many, many years later, although it's been 32 years since I had to drink alcohol, that I could take prescription drugs because the doctor gave them to me. What he forgot to tell me was these big pharma, they don't have exit strategies for the drugs. They never tested how to get people off of them. And before I knew it, I had broke my back in Moscow. I broke 7 facets in my back, ended up on fentanyl patches. And I almost died, Eric, almost died. But I went back to Liberty University. I already had my bachelor's from there. I already had honorary doctorate in theology. But I went back to Liberty online to study addiction. I got a 4.0. Hadn't done that since I discovered girls in the 4th grade, Eric. But I want to tell you what happened to me, man. I learned beyond a shadow of a doubt, this is a developmentally acquired brain disease, probably genetically predisposition. And once a kid, during neuroplasticity, the birth to the age 26, the brain is forming. When kids introduce artificial substances, doesn't matter if it's weed they smoke, cigarettes they smoke, alcohol they smoke, prescription drugs they smoke, the brain changes in fundamental ways, several different ways. And the bottom line is once you're pickled, you can't be a cucumber again. So why we do need enforcement, God bless our men.
So let me stop you there. You're saying weed is a gateway drug to harder drugs.
So is cigarettes, so is alcohol. Research seems to indicate that any form of mind or mood altering aberration in the brain between birth and age 26 causes what's called a mutagenesis of brain cells, so that once the person begins using, like me, for example, I used alcohol, prescription drugs, street drugs, when I was 15. I stopped. But fast forward many years later to where I'm a minister, a celebrated religious celebrity. All of a sudden, what happens? I take prescription drugs and the brain kicks in, the disease kicks in.
You just said you can't go from a pickle back to a cucumber. You're back to a cucumber. How'd you do it?
No, I'm not. I get a daily reprieve based on my connection. The most important word is the first word, we. Based on my connection to other people. The National Institute of Health discovered when similarly traumatized people speak to each other about addiction with truth and listen with empathy, not to compare, but to identify, the brain releases a wave called a Rafa wave, and it literally rewires around the addictive column.
What about kids that don't want to hear that? What about people who are using who they don't want other people to help them? They don't even care if they socialize with anyone else.
That's why we got to get to the families, Eric. We got to reach the mothers, the fathers, the brothers, the sisters. For every addict that dies, usually somebody was enabling them. Usually somebody was paying their bills.
We'll get to them and do what?
We have to reach them and show them.
Look at that camera and tell people, camera one, right there. Okay. Tell people what they need to be doing to save people.
If you or someone you love is an addict, there are 2 words more important than any other word. Get help. There's only one word that will help this disease and heal our nation. The word we. No one can do it alone. Enforcement can't do it alone. Your doctor can't do it. The police can't do it. You can't call. Nobody can help an addict. Once you're an addict, only God can save you.
Let me jump in here for 1 second. I was doing a speech about a year ago, a little more than a year ago at CPAC. It was about losing my son in the opioid crisis, and I got off the stage and I went. There's called Media Row, and it's busy. A lot of people going back and forth. I was inundated with people, young people saying, "I lost a friend. I lost a sister. I'm worried about my friend. I'm worried about my father." Everyone is being touched by this, and everyone is whispering it to me. And I said, "No, it's got to stop. We have to be able to say, my friend, my mom, my sister, my brother, my coach, my co-captain on the football team, they have a problem. We need to talk about it. You do someone a favor. You will do someone a favor if you call that opioid hotline right now and ask for help. How do you help a friend of mine or a loved one who is going down the wrong path? They will help you. And if you have problems with that, go on my Twitter account, get on there. There's 1,000,001 people on there all talking about how to help each other. Your answer of we means a lot, but people who need help have to be open to having help.
And sometimes, Eric, I look at you so grateful for you. I feel like you're a voice crying in the wilderness. The AIDS epidemic wasn't important until it affected every strata of society. And my fear is we keep going after the supply. The war on drugs is a failure. We have to go after the demand. As long as there's demand, there's going to be a supply. And what you're saying to our country is the most significant message on addiction in a long, long time, maybe ever. Because what you're doing is bringing to the surface what we all know. It's like cancer. It's like leukemia. It's like AIDS. Until it touches you, you don't realize what it really is.
Guess what, folks? 72,000 people died in 2017 from drug overdoses, the vast majority of them being opioid overdoses.
And may I say something, Eric? I just want to say, think of this, brother. Think of this. If it was 200 dogs, we told somebody, hey, 200 dogs are dying every day in America. If it was 200 horses here in Wellington, where I was, big horse place, everybody's in the poll. If I said, hey, 200 horses are dying every day, think about it. 200 cats. Think of the outcry.
I'll give you another one. 200 people a day are dying from bad water that they're drinking in any part of the country.
Think of it.
We would have billions of dollars making sure that the bad water or the bad food supply, there would be tanks rolling up Main Street. Stay right there. I want to talk to our audience. Now, can I get the first question, sir?
I want to know, I work in the treatment industry for the last 30 years. Treatment denials from insurance companies really impacts the length of care, and we're not able to treat patients as long as that we would like. Do you have any ideas or any things we could do to further this cause, to get patients longer-term care?
Well, Rick, and you and I can both talk about this. I can't be specific with you, but I know the president, and I was there for the bill signing. He signed $6 billion of money that's going towards everything, enforcement, but also treatment. This year and another $6 billion next year. How do we get some of this, a lot more of it toward? Look, the audience said it was unanimous. More towards treatment, less towards law enforcement. How do we do this?
It's
have
the
this
greatest
discussion?
need of our republic right now. Thank God for our president doing that. However, throwing all the money in the world toward this won't change a thing until we bring to the surface what you're trying to bring, that this is not just a real crisis. It's an epidemic. It's a massacre, enough that the insurance companies begin to see that it's going to affect their revenues if they don't start. And our government can do more. Our Congress, Big Pharma is the #1 lobbyist. Doctors are the #1 lobbyists. We got to change the insurance
Let's get
companies.
another question. What's your question?
Hi, I'm Emma. I'm in 10th grade, and I'm wondering what we as young people can do to stop this crisis.
Boy, let me take that. I would like to take that. You have this discussion. You know, a lady called me and she said, what do I do? I have an 11-year-old. And I said, well, have a discussion with your 11-year-old daughter. And she said, no, she's too young. I said, no, she's not too young. She called me back after she had the discussion. She said, you know what? I'm so glad we saw the town hall, because I had the discussion and my 11-year-old was wanting to talk about it, but afraid to tell her mom. You got it. What we're doing right here, you stood up and asked the question on television. People realize that this can't be a stigma anymore. It's a national health crisis. What you can do, you got a friend you think you're worried about, have a discussion with him or her. If they don't want to get help, you're doing someone a favor by calling another friend and talking to this friend and saying, hey, get some help. Just have the discussion. If it's not with a parent or coach, have it with a friend or a loved one. Sir.
Hi, sir. My name is Andrew Henderson. I come from East Lyme, Connecticut. I've been in the recovery community for 2 years, celebrating 2 years of recovery this year in July. And one of the biggest problems that I see being a taxpayer in Delray Beach, working directly with people that are in state-run facilities in DAF, people are getting turned away by the hundreds every single day. People that are seeking treatment are getting turned away. And what is the state of Florida? What are the county? What is Palm Beach County as a whole? What are we doing collectively to make sure that everybody in treatment that's seeking help gets the treatment and not turned away, to get back on the streets, to get back?
So, Rick, a lot of discussion that I hear is that there'll be someone worried about another loved one. They're looking for a bed and they can't find a bed. What do we do?
I spent 72 hours last week, Eric. Some parents called me in a northern state. They said their son died, but they had the Narcan and they zapped him within like 30 seconds. His heart started beating. Said, got to get our son up. I called the kid, look, you're not a bad kid. You're a good kid with a bad disease. And when you start using drugs, it all fit, right? He had the disease. And I spent 72 hours, a waiting list of 100 people.
Yeah.
The thing is what you said, Eric, we got to raise our voices.
Raise your
cry out
voices.
about it.
And Marco Rubio, your senator, was on this thing. Call him, call his office, say, we need Florida to get more funding. Well, one quick question, if you don't mind, very quickly.
I'm here to make a comment. My name is Janice Norman. I'm with Catch the Wave of Hope. We are looking to abolish human trafficking. And one thing we haven't talked about tonight is how the opioid epidemic is affecting other areas of society, particularly human trafficking, which we now know is a multi-billion-dollar business. Opioids are being used to lure people or victims into the trafficking business. Families are resulting to trafficking because they need to support their opioid
very
epidemic.
Important comment. It is. It's one of the related problems with the opioid crisis. I'm going to say thank you for those questions. Great panel. Great audience. Also, I'd like to thank our guests tonight, Rick Amato of Liberty University, Dr. Aldo Morales, Dr. Raju Mangrola, Chief Deputy Gary Wilson, and Major Douglas Hardy, filmmaker Jim Wahlberg, Senator Marco Rubio, and State Attorney Dave Ehrenberg. On behalf of Sinclair Broadcast, I want to thank you as well. I'm going to leave you with this thought. Two things. One pill can kill to kids. One pill can kill. My son took one pill. He never woke up from it. And for parents, we're talking about it all day. We've been talking about all day. Remove the stigma. Have the discussion with your children, with your loved ones. You're not too smart, too dumb, too white, too black, too Asian, too whatever, too religious, too Christian, too Jewish, rich, poor, gay, straight. It doesn't matter. It will cross their paths. Have the discussion with them. One pill can kill. Not my kid syndrome. Two very deadly things we need to talk about going forward. Good night, everybody.
Your Voice, Your Future Town Hall, Opioids, a national crisis, has been brought to you by Liberty University.